Hey guys, so I've been doing a couple of videos all based on the same subject, an initial video and 3 follow-ups, the most recent one being yesterday. And in those videos, I talked about initially what Ken had originally planned to do. Now, the Triforce kid, give credit where credit is due, came out and had to correct me. And as he looked it up more, and as I kind of looked it up myself a little bit, as well as heard what others had to say, what he corrected me on was indeed fact. That Ken Penders originally wanted, that Ken Penders had wrote this story, or originally was going to write the story, if you will, where Sally would lose her virginity, because Archie wanted to go into a more mature direction, but he never got, it never happened. Well, let me correct myself. Okay, let me rewind. Basically, long story short, and you can see it in the initial video, or hear it in the initial video, Ken had a story where Sally was going to lose her virginity to Jeffrey St. John. And it was all part of some kind of, I guess you could say, plan or something like that, directive that Archie Comics was going down at that time, where all their titles were going to go in a drastically new direction, even including the license titles. And that included Sonic. And by having Sally, go through this situation with Jeffrey, would have been part of that initiative. However, that didn't happen because, according to what Triforce Kid told me, from what he found out from Ken Penders, they got cold feet at the last second and decided to keep Sonic in a lot of the books at that time, all ages. I mean, nowadays you look at the books sometimes and some of the titles are still all ages, but a majority of them are more in the teen range now. So basically they're in an area that was originally slated to happen a lot earlier. But over time, the Triforce Kid has tried his best to provide me with a little bit more information about what's been going on, or what was the situation, if you will, as I adjust the camera here a little bit. But, exactly what was the situation going on behind the scenes, and he's been getting info from Ken himself. Now, here's the thing. In the last video I did yesterday morning, before I got ready for work, I basically said along the lines of whether or not you want to believe what Ken says or you don't. And the reason I said that is mainly because of the fact of what a lot of fans perceived Ken to have done in the past that caused a lot of them to lose a lot of trust in the guy. I mean, for example, one of the more notable ones that, a lot of people that, talk about the Ken Penders error and, and incidents and, behind the scenes and, legally and all that. One of the things that they bring up is Ken Penders stabbing Ben Hurst in the back. Long story short, Ben wanted to, for years, get the 3rd season officially of Sonic SatAM off the ground, whether it was new episodes, direct-to-video, or even a feature film. And he was leaning more in the feature film direction, and when Ben contacted the people at Sega, the right kind of people like the PRs and all that, one of the PR people, a lady, was cool with it. She loved the idea and wanted to have him call back later or call the next day so they can discuss further details. Well, Ken had gotten word about this and asked, Ben if he could join up or if he could help contribute. And Ben, being the cool guy that he is, said, sure, no problem. Heck, I'll let you take part in it. I'll let you be a partner with me, because he was willing to have a co-creator or co-director, co-writer, if you will, on the project, from what it sounds like. But unfortunately, what happened is that was not, apparently, if you believe Ben Hurst, and a lot of people tend to believe Ben Hurst over Ken Penders, believe it or not, when it comes to this, that wasn't the case. Because what happened the next day is when Ben called the Sega people back up, or they called them one way or the other, he got lit into by the same person, or at least one of them, at the PR, saying, hey, we don't pay, people to, make Sonic products for us. They pay us, or something like that. or we don't have people pay. Some along the lines of, you know, we, they don't pay. We don't. They don't pay us. We pay them, or something like that. And that was the end of the conversation. Basically, any chance for the movie to happen went out the window. And Ben had found out, I guess, through the conversation, that Ken had relayed the info to them in a much less flattery way. Much less flattery way. So Ben, basically, long story short, came out on some of the forums and interviews and basically said, in short terms, thanks for the knife in the back, Ken, because Ken, from Ben's perspective, had stabbed him in the back. He had used him basically to, take his first step towards his feature film, and that's how a lot of fans perceived it. That Ken Penders showed his true colors by stabbing Ben in the back. And so all he could do basically is focus on his film, as being the film for Sonic and not some third season or whatever that was never made or never really was going to get off the ground no matter what, in the eyes of, some people that, in the eyes of a lot of people that look at it that way. Now, that's not just, one of the things that, when that got out, really pissed a lot of people off at Ken Penders. But it's mostly the fact that Ken, behind the scenes, when he left the book, and everything, just could not work out an agreement with Archie Comics. Now, give credit where credit is due. According to a lot of sources, and even the Archie Sonic Digest people pointed this out when they talked about the Ken Penders era recently. They pointed this out and they said that Ken, when he left, had some provisions put in, or at least wanted some provisions kept in there. Basically, an agreement made that would allow his characters to remain on the book, no questions asked. Some of those provisions were Lala Sue and Julie Sue, don't mess with them, don't kill them, they got to stay alive because, they have a purpose. One of the other provisions, don't kill Locke, Locke, Locke. Do not kill him, which was Knuckles' father in the books, whatsoever. Other provisions were things like, don't do anything to the echidna populace. Don't do this, don't do that, keep this around, keep that around, keep that intact, make sure this character's got an arc for a bit, make sure that character's got an arc, make sure that character's focused, make sure that character's focused. He was just asking for provisions that, would keep his characters in the book and, wouldn't cause any trouble, to the point that he would have to do what basically was exposed earlier on. You see, Archie Comics, at one point when Ken had briefly left previously and then came back, wanted to take Ken to court, or the other way around, one of them. But basically there was a legal battle between the two. And this first case, thankfully was, I think, thrown out or settled or something like that. And what happened was, during this first initial case, which again wasn't as problematic as the one that would follow, they found out that basically, Archie Comics, the courts and Ken found out that Archie Comics physically did not have. Let me see if I got something here for an example. They physically, did not have any of the legal documents on hand. That they had photocopies, if you will, that showed that Ken has signed them, but both Ken and the court pointed out that these could have been, forgery signatures of his name, of his signature. So, long story short, the first case, I think, was settled, taken care of, but it did open the door that, hey, Ken Penders could get his characters back legally, because Archie doesn't have, a foot to stand on unless they do promote the legit physical copies that say, hey, I agreed to the fact that these characters that I create for the book belong to Archie and mostly Sega. So after that, of course, came the other legal battle that, surfaced, way after he left the book. And it was mostly due to the fact of not just what happened with EA and BioWare. That's an entirely different story that Ken, didn't get a happy ending out of, but it did have some kind of compromise that came out. He kind of had like a bittersweet ending, not the happy one, with a compromise that came from it. Anyway, this all started to happen, the second case, if you will, when basically the provisions, the agreement that Ken had put into place, and I think Archie had agreed with him to keep in place, went out the door. And they went out the door the moment that Ian Flynn, 15 issues in, did what Ken Penders thought he and Archie Comics had agreed would not be allowed to happen. He killed off Locke, Knuckles' father. He killed him off in a sacrifice in the conclusion of the Interjack saga. Where Knuckles was Interjack for that 4-parter to save his son, to restore him. Locke was written to sacrifice himself. And there were other characters also that were killed off that Ken had wrote as well. Like Tommy Turtle. There was this horse guy that appeared maybe once or twice in the book. He was killed off. A lot of what Ken had created character-wise was, given the kibosh. They were basically wiped out of existence. Including some of the dingo and echidna populace. They were changed and altered, much to Ken's dismay, because this is not part of what was agreed upon and promised. And, this just, it was just crazy, is what it was. It was just really crazy. And again, it was due to this and other factors that led to them back in court. And to quote what Linkara said when he brought this up when he did a review of Sonic Super Special number 7, he basically said that one of the things that the judge said in one of those, I think, hearings was, well, this is a fine mess, you got here. Or something along the lines. Basically, the judge looked at Ken, looked at Archie, and said, this is a nice little fine mess you got yourselves into. And you can't blame the judge for saying something along those lines, because Archie Comics, apparently was disorganized to the point that from, keeping documents that they needed to keep on board or on their person were lost. They were disorganized to the point that they had lost any documents, like I said, that they needed to keep physically on their person to prevent any writer or creator of said characters and, worlds and all that from taking them back into possession. And that's what Ken ended up doing. He ended up taking these characters back into his possession, is what he did. And it's because of this that led us into what would be known as the reboot, or the soft reboot, or soft retcon, depending on how you look at it. And a lot of people blame not just Archie Comics, but they solely put the blame on Ken Penders. Well, at least some of them put the blame solely on Ken Penders because of the fact that both sides could not work out an agreement. That Archie Comics did not take action and stop someone like Ian Flynn and say, whoa, 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 whoa. Like Mike Peritto. Mike Peritto was the editor-in-chief. The guy that, Triforce Kid says should take most of the blame. And after reading the information that Triforce Kid provided through, talking with Ken and other research, I totally agree with Triforce Kid. I mean, if you're the editor-in-chief, you have the power to stop things from happening. So, again, both sides do take the blame. Because to an extent, probably Archie more so than Ken, but that being said, all Archie had to do to prevent Ken from even saying, hey, I'm going to take my characters back now, This is an opportunity I've been looking for. All Mike had to do was take Ian aside after seeing what was going to happen to Locke and say, whoa, 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 what are you doing? What are you doing? And if Ian was to come out and say, oh, I'm making making a personal sacrifice here to get Knuckles restored. Why is that? Why? Why, Ian? Why? Yeah, Mike, why? Oh, it's because we had an agreement with Ken Penders. Ken created Locke. And if we want to keep these characters in here, we can't kill him. So why don't you do this? Write it to where he gets hit, but he's still alive, but he's kind of like in an astral projection. Kind of like the Kendrick's character in Power Rangers. Like, she's not necessarily dead, she's just now more of a spiritual guide. That temporarily joined the gods and all that or whatever to learn. To get wisdom, I guess, beyond her years or something like that. Just because of the way she acted after she sacrificed herself and, after she was restored, if you catch my drift. But the point is, had Mike gone and stopped Ian from doing that, instead of saying, hey, that's a good idea, let's kill that guy off, we don't need him anymore, then nothing would happen. Nothing would happen. Now, if I was Ken Penders, all I would have done, in my personal opinion, so that I wouldn't have to go through this legal mess, is I would have contacted them, asked to talk to the president at the time of Archie Comics, Victor Golick or whoever, ask him why was this character killed off, remind them of the agreement that they made, and then have Victor bring in maybe Mike, maybe bring in Ian and say, hey, don't do that again. Don't take any of these characters that Ken created, for the book, that helps make the book more expandable and workable with. Don't do any of what you're planning to do anymore. Keep them around. If Ken would have done that instead of just taking legal action right off the bat, or be in the process of doing it, again, we wouldn't have been in what the judge created a fine mess as it was. So here's the thing. Do I agree that Ken probably knows more about what happened behind the scenes than Ian Flynn or Mike Perithro or anybody else? Does he know more about what happened behind the scenes? Does he have more experience in the comic book industry, in the multimedia industry than Ian and such? Absolutely. Does that mean most of what he says at times from working behind the scenes at the comic for Archie Comics, is true? More than likely, yes. And, are people, do people find it hard to believe anything he says whatsoever because of what happened, outside of the comic and stuff, along with the legal situation? Yeah, people find it hard to believe. But again, to me, when I look at this, and I say this from an unbiased standpoint, everybody shares the blame. Whether one person is telling the truth because they have had more experience and more time working on the book than anybody, and definitely did most of the world building. There's no doubt. Or if it's somebody that's the publisher and in charge of, allowing things to be kept in there and taken out, whatever. The fact of the matter is, all parties, Archie Comics, Ian Flynn, Ken Penders, and to a point Carl Bollers, because he kind of had miscommunications with Ken, which Ken had to fix, despite his good intentions as well, because he wanted to do things that were a little game faithful at times as well, according to what Archie Sonic Digest podcast had to say. But still, he did some things in there too that just, did not really work with a lot of folks. So again, to me, and I know I'm going to get some flack for this, and I do apologize, but from my unbiased opinion, everybody shares the blame to a point. Everybody shares the blame to a point. And if I was to look at it from, some kind of tier maker perspective, Archie Comics would be at the top of the list. Ian Flynn would be right below him, and tied at, taking the blame, but not as much, would be Ken and Carl. Because they were writing stories. Sometimes some of their writings were not the best and everything. Some of the ideas they wanted to do were probably not the best, that they didn't get to do. But the fact is, if we take a look from a tier list perspective, that S ranking would go right to Archie Comics, because being a long-term company, they should know better. They should know better when it comes to preventing things like this from happening and making sure they have the right kind of documents on hand so that this kind of stuff doesn't become an issue. But yeah, look, I get what Triforce Kid, was telling me when he commented on the third video or the fourth video. I get it. But again, like I said, the reason I said that is because there's a lot of folks that blame Ken for what happened with the proposed Sonic.am third season movie, if not show, whatever it was, mostly movie, as well as the legal situation that had the comic get revamped and rebooted into what it was. So, look, I'm not saying that Ken's not telling the truth. He has more experience than Ian and Carl. There's no doubt. But still, when you look and you listen to what other people have to say, when you read what other people have to say, you listen to what they say, then you can understand why I came out and, not offensively, just unbiasedly said the thing along the lines of whether you want to believe him or not. That's the fact. That's the truth right there. But let me know what you guys' thoughts are. Comment below, live chat during the premiere, like the video. Super chats are open and would be appreciated during the live chat. Whatever you can do. Also check me out at Venmo at Brian-Walmer-2. Yeah, Venmo, Brian-Walmer-2 to help donate there. Also at Cash App at BWRoses98. Also check me out at Vimeo at BWRoses for content you can't get here on YouTube due to copyright. Also check me out at deviantart.com/BVW1979. Also check me out at BW Roses Discussions, all your favorite audio podcast locations except for Pandora, and on patreon.com at BW Roses with the $1, $3 tier. But again, I wasn't trying to upset anybody there, but from an unbiased standpoint, that is why I said what I did. Because when you really look at it, everybody shares the blame. They really do. But if one takes the blame most of all from like a tier maker standpoint in that S ranking, it would be Archie Comics, no doubt. Followed by Ian, and tied at the bottom, Ken, and tied at the third slot, Ken and Carl. So, let me know what your thoughts are, guys. Live chat during the premiere. I'm out. That's it.